You're listening to Why We Do What We Do. Welcome to Why We Do What We Do. I am your all thumbs host, Abraham.
And I'm your thumbs up host, Shane.
We're a psychology podcast. We talk about the things that people do and how they do them and why they do them and the digits with which they use to do them.
Yes, and at some point in time, we're going to talk about when they do them and who they do them. But like right now, we focus on why and what they do. So
that's right. The WH, some of the WH questions that are in the name, and maybe we'll get to the other ones too at some point. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for listening. And let's go ahead and start by talking about the fact that this is, if you're listening to it on the day that it publishes, June 26th, which means we're celebrating or acknowledging the some of the holidays, including Beautician's Day.
It's Forgiveness Day, which I'll never celebrate.
It is. Are you holding a grudge? Is that why?
Yeah. I will celebrate every day but that day.
It's International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking Day. That seems... We kind of just missed that with our episodes on addiction, didn't we?
I know. It was all lead up to celebrating that day, I guess, maybe.
Fair, sure.
Maybe. Well, no, I don't know. It's International Day in support of victims of torture.
Yikes. I mean, support them for sure. Let's not have them be victims anymore.
Yeah, let's not torture people.
It's National Canoe Day.
It's National Pudding Day. I'm specifically, let me say that again, National Chocolate Pudding Day, the best of all puddings.
Sure. It is National Parchment Cooking Day. Don't cook the parchment.
Nope.
Cook with the parchment.
Yes. It's also Tropical Cocktails Day, or mocktails if you like mocktails. Like, put a little umbrella in your drink and you'll be fine.
That's right. And Arnold Palmer with just iced tea and lemonade and an umbrella.
Yeah.
And you can keep it cool by putting it in your refrigerator because it is World Refrigeration Day.
What a game changer that was.
I was just going to say, I was like, this actually might be worth spending some time on if we ever dig into like human invention specific episodes, because refrigeration like changed this world for humans.
Yeah. Also, it's actively changing the world for the worse because it is contributing to global warming, but it is also so important.
Yeah.
That would be so much fun to do a series on human inventions. Like, that might be a new set of episodes that we do.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about the printing press as a book fan myself.
Right.
It is also Boys and Girls Club Week.
I mean, it's Pride Month. Boys and curls kind of make sense, but you know.
Yeah, that's fair.
It is Fish Are Friends, Not Food Week. I support this.
I like that.
I'm friends with fish.
It's National Body Piercing Week as well. I support that. That's great.
Got some experience there. It is National Camping Week,
which is nice because it's also National Insect Week, so campers and insects can celebrate together.
And they will. Undoubtedly they will. National Lightning Safety Awareness Week. This one strikes a little close to home for Shane.
Oh, yeah. My mom was, that's nice. My mom was hit by lightning. She's alive and well, and we call her Boltress because she has powers now.
Wow.
But she was hit by lightning several years ago.
Glad she's okay.
Yeah, me too. I realize it's also my turn to say the next thing. It's also Windjammer Days.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I feel like I would be more stoked if it was Windbreaker Days.
Sure.
And everybody was wearing like 90s windbreakers that were like Charlotte Hornets themed or something like that.
It is Deafblind Awareness Week. So that's an important one.
I like that.
There's some people's birthdays I could acknowledge real quick. It's apparently Ariana Grande's birthday, Audrey Plaza, Nick Offerman, and Paul Thomas Anderson.
Oh, I like most of those people.
I love Nick Offerman. I mean, I like all those people, but you know, yeah.
Yeah, they're all fine. Nick Offerman's great though.
Yeah. Not to single anyone out, it just, you know. Anyway, we are, as I said, a psychology podcast, not a podcast that simply recounts the various holidays that people make up and then decide to dedicate a day, week, or month to, or even more than that, or less than that sometimes. But nevertheless, we talk about those things because, you know, we can. This is our platform. We do what we want.
Yeah, we're allowed to say what we want on here. I mean, we try to say things that are reasonable, but we do say whatever we want on here.
We try. And so at the risk of cursing us forever, I'm going to say this might be a short one. I guess we'll see. Before we get started, I want to let everyone know who is listening, if you like what you are hearing today, if you are already enthralled by this weird cockamamie thing that we're doing, then you can support us by joining us on Patreon. Leave us a rating and review, pick up some merch, like and subscribe. I don't know if I've said Patreon already. Do that thing. And I'll talk more about how you can support us at the end of this topic. But today we've got something important in mind, or maybe on hand, which is our thumbs.
Yes. So sometimes we forget how drastically the morphological layout of our bodies affects our psychology. So it's important to understand how our bodies impact everything around us and inside of us.
Yeah. We take for granted every aspect of our ways of interacting with the world around us, when in fact, these physical features directly drive our experiences, our learning, and our development. Even if you ever think about the fact that when you're looking out into the world, everything that you're seeing is a construction of how our eyes and brains are picking up and using the light that's bouncing off of the things around us. Very effective, but it's just one way of interacting with the space that we find ourselves in, and it is one that has gone through at least 2 layers of filtering.
Yes.
So our biology is really important here.
Yeah. And imagine if humans were, on average, half their current height. Distances would be more difficult to cover. We would need a lot less food and less space in general, and we wouldn't be able to see as far just from walking around. And this would be a profound shift in how we think, plan, and move around the planet, and probably interact with other people.
Yeah, very much so. And would therefore affect how we think about basic things, just like getting from point A to point B, and what that means, and how many resources are ever needed for one single person.
Right.
Or imagine that we could see into the infrared color or the infrared part of the color spectrum. We'd probably, I would think, prefer darker places because there'd be less overwhelming light that would be there. Would be able to detect things that were behind solid objects that we can't see just by using the part of the light spectrum that we currently use. And we might be practically blinded by places where there was a lot of heat, right? Like if it was just very hot, it'd look like a haze just filling our view that would obscure everything that we were trying to see.
Yeah, that would be bad news. Furthermore, our senses and physical features determine the extent to which and how we interact with the world, and that shapes the behaviors and ultimately affect our senses and physical features. So it's all interacting. So like, for instance,
right,
we require nutrition from plants to survive. So we cultivate and grow plants we need for food. And the food we create slowly shapes how we evolve to handle the kinds of foods we consume. So in the current future of humans, our body is going to process sugar very differently, right? Because of how much we consume it, how much we need it, and stuff like that. And eventually our bodies will process millions and millions of tons of sugar, even more so than we do now, right?
We'll basically turn into honeybees.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we are. We're just hairy honeybees. All of that to say is like all of that stuff shifts and changes, and that's all part of like the natural selection piece that we're going to get into.
Yeah, maybe what we're doing with the kind of diets that we've cultivated is that we will become dependent on that. Like right now, sugar is pretty much superfluous to a healthy diet. Like we don't need it. But maybe after, hundreds of years of consuming it at high volumes, we'll actually become physically dependent on it, and we'll have to have it be a key feature of things that we eat to continue to survive and live a healthy life.
Right. And
then maybe we'll look at sugar and be like, ugh, that's healthy food. I don't want that.
Right. Yeah. No, thanks. Ugh. Salad. Yuck.
It'd be sugar salad.
I like it.
So arguably one of the most significant features of our physiological form, at least one that is the most uniquely human adaptations that we have as humans, is our opposable thumbs. And just in case people are curious what it means to say that they're opposable, which I think is reasonable because they're not exactly completely opposite our hands. What it means here is that they work freely and independently of our other fingers. Like you can move your thumb around without having to move your other fingers. Mm-hmm. And it faces a different direction than the other fingers, and it can touch every other finger individually. And you can go ahead and touch your thumb to your index, middle, and ring fingers. That is not something very many other creatures can do.
You can try this out. So go ahead and take a paper towel roll or a wooden spoon. Hold onto it with your 4 fingers or with no thumb, and then imagine holding your body up in a tree, maintaining mobility while weighing a few hundred pounds with just your fingers and no thumbs.
That's right. Go ahead and do that. We'll wait.
Yeah.
Now, Of course, there are many creatures, mostly primates, that have some version of opposable thumbs. So then I think people will rightfully ask, why does this seem like this is actually that important and particularly important for humans?
Yeah, so Abraham, why is this so particularly important and specifically important for humans? I was thinking the same thing that you just asked.
You're setting me up. Yeah, what made us adapt to develop thumbs? Okay, so let's skip the whole if we evolved from apes, then why are there still apes thing. We've been there, we've done that. We evolved from a common ancestor. There, done. All right. Way back in the day, 3 million or so years ago, our primate friends started spending more time in trees. We started climbing things that were nearby.
Yeah, which gave us access to a few different things. It gave us access to more food, less competitors, because there were not as many things in the trees, varied foods like plants and flowers that had differential health benefits. So primates had access to stuff that others didn't. And there was less contact with predators and easier escape from predators. So basically, they could just jump up into a tree and hide from the people that couldn't climb or the things that couldn't climb.
Yeah, mostly things that then couldn't get to them. And again, access to food. So it's like a safe, out of the way place that also is abundant in food. Great for a species that tends toward lays the way that we do.
Uh-huh.
To stay up there, though, you've got to be able to sort of hold on to stuff and be able to move around, which means you need to be able to grasp those things that are around you, which in this case were branches. Hence, opposable thumbs became very useful and necessary. And those of us who are ancestors who had things that were more like opposable thumbs were more likely to be able to move about successfully, climb faster, stay up there longer, get the resources more successfully, therefore reproduced more. That's just how evolution works. And the thumbs became more and more useful as that mutation was more and more selected for by the circumstances of that environment.
Yes, so thumbs were selected in, tails were selected out for humans. Right? Like, if you really think about it, I mean, like, we have a tailbone. I was born with a tail, but, for the most part, humans don't need them anymore.
But you were also born with horns, so...
I was also born with horns, and the doctors... The vets, I should say, the veterinarians that birthed me screamed and screamed and screamed at the aberration that I was, the monster man that I was on the day that I was born.
Well, with all of that, this is probably a perfect time to let people go think on that for a minute, and we'll do the ads.
Oh, man, this ad sticks out like a sore thumb.
Okay, let's get back on track. I'm done talking about Shane's terrifying birth and talk about animals.
My poor mother. So, for one, most other animals with opposable thumbs do not have the same proportions or muscular control that we have. So, apes, possums, lemurs, pandas, chameleons, and some tree frogs have opposable thumbs, but only kind of. I imagine that everybody here, while you're listening to this, is probably thinking a whole lot about your thumbs and how your thumbs move and how they operate. And you should, because it is very unique in the animal kingdom.
Yes. So there are lots of creatures that have fairly dexterous, like finger clawed digit things on the ends of their arms.
Right.
Like octopus has the ability to it's very, very flexible, but also lives in an environment that it doesn't have access to things that require dexterity. They don't live very long. Anyway, point being,
right.
Opposable thumbs, good. Not very many animals have them. We just listed the ones that do. So some people might be thinking, what about pandas? So most bears, they have, well, actually many creatures that are four-legged have these dew claw things. Pandas are kind of unique. They have this thing that looks very much like a thumb. As a matter of fact, it's often called a pseudo thumb. They have a bone that extends from their wrist. It's not actually a digit. It's a bone that extends off the wrist. But because it's a bone, and it doesn't have the sort of carpals in it. It doesn't have the joints that move. It doesn't move on its own. Instead, what a panda has to do is move its fingers toward the thumb. And this means that the thumb cannot help grip anything. It's just the strength of the other digits that allows it to manipulate objects. So it basically pushes those against an immovable thumb. It's like an anchor, kind of like an anvil. And so it can close things around that, but the thumb can't actually do anything that is dexterous or would enable fine motor movements.
I think when people argue about evolution and they say, if we came from apes, why they're still apes. I think that that's the worst argument against evolution. I think the argument against like natural selection and evolution is the panda bear. Like this thing should not exist. It does not make sense. And we are keeping this thing alive for decades because it's actively trying to select itself out.
It's a charismatic megafauna, and so we have decided to protect it in lieu of protecting many other keystone species that are critically important to their environments. Pandas are cute. We're not advocating that we get rid of them. If anything, I'd say I'd advocate for just more support of all the other animals that also need protection from us. But I think that's where they get their probably less supportive critics.
Yeah, I have seen so many pandas fall out of trees clumsily, like in the recent like weeks, and I'm just like, what is going on? Maybe one day we'll do an episode on conservation. That's what we'll do, and we'll continue to save the pandas. So this thing with the thumbs that we're talking about, with this like kind of pseudo thumb thing, this is the case with other animals as well. They have the thumbs, but they can't use them very much, and even if they could, would their brain allow for the development of tool use? Well, possibly. It is very possible that could happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will immediately have been thinking about the fact that one of the things our opposable thumbs gave us was that we could then manipulate tools. We could manipulate objects that would allow us to more easily manipulate other objects. The very basic lever, right, or using a stick to manipulate things is not actually totally unique to humans. There are many creatures who do use some form of tools, but we can like custom make our tools very specific for very particular tasks, right? Let's put this experiment to the test. Let's give a monkey some tools, teach him how to use it, right? And so people have actually done this. Apes have been trained to use tools, and they were able to use those tools successfully to a point.
Right.
The issue is, as we've been talking about, their thumbs are too short and they're too weak relative to the rest of their hand. They've got these long fingers that are very strong, and their palms are also very long. And this actually prevents apes from being able to sort of close their fingers and their thumb together around something very fine, like the tools that we might use. And they therefore lack the precise dexterity that is it's so easy for us. We literally don't have to think about it. It's very natural. Our hands are just perfectly shaped to grip things in such a way that we can manufacture and hold tools against our thumb, where our thumb is a critical point of how we manipulate fine motor movements. And even other apes who have very similar hand structures is not proportionate enough, and the muscles aren't set up in a way that they can get the same utility out of trying to use similar tools.
Right. And so the necessity to outsmart our predators and our prey due to lack of pretty much all other defensives and defensive biology forced humans to be creative. So like we're like a soft bunch. Like we're a soft, meaty, tasty thing for predators. Like we're slow, our senses are dull. Like it makes sense that like predators would find us and seek us out. So we had to be smart about things.
Also, we can't hunt very well with just what we've got because, as you said, we're slow. We don't have any sharp parts on our bodies. We don't have a lot of protection. So if a thing fights back, it's probably going to win. Like as you said, we are marshmallows with very easily breakable skin and very little defense and very little offense.
Yeah, we're the peeps of the animal world. Like it's absurd. So
that's really good. I like it. Maybe we should call this episode "The Peeps of the Animal World."
That's for the episode on why our rib cage doesn't extend over our stomachs. Like
that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, with evolutionary pressure to survive, those of us with strong proportioned hands would start manipulating objects for intentional use. And that is, we would start making tools.
Yes. So we can actually look back at the evolutionary history that we do have for fossil records in humans. And one of the more recent research that's come out looking at our ancestor Australopithecus afarensis, which is, many people may have heard of Lucy. This was like a primate that they found that was sort of early in the chain of evolution toward what would later become humans. This was a pretty ape-like version of a human ancestor, lived about 2 to 3.8 million years ago. And this creature that was, again, an ancestor to humans also had opposable thumbs. However, the thumbs were thin and short and were likely not very strong. Like we've got big fat muscles and bones in our thumbs that make them very strong versus this previous ancestor where they were kind of thin and weak.
Right. And it was probably not until Homo habilis, about 2.5 million, or habilis.
I think it's habilis. I think you had it right the first time.
I see those words and I go, blah, blah, blah. So either way, about 2.5 million years ago, and it was that group that the hands evolved to have the skeletal and muscular arrangement that makes them good for fine motor dexterity, specifically tool making. And just as a quick side note, Homo habilis means handyman. So that's where that comes from, which is fun. That's a fun little nugget of information.
Right? Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Fun little nuggets of information.
Yeah, so you better win trivia, is all I'm saying, folks.
Or at least get some of those questions right.
Yeah, get at least that
Since
one.
It's usually a hodgepodge. Okay, let's talk about some of these tools. One of the probably first things that people made were offensive or defensive tools, which were knives. And early knives were likely made by striking one rock against another until it formed a sharp point. Now, an important point that anthropologists have been investigating and experimenting with this is that there's basically no way to do this without being able to powerfully grip and manipulate both objects to get those precise strikes. You have to be able to hold one rock steady, and you need to be able to grip the other rock in a strong grip that will allow you to strike a specific target on the rock that you're hitting so that you can sort of shave off chunks of it to start whittling it down into a sharp point. And so that was something that was uniquely available by virtue of those opposable thumbs and proportioned skeletal muscular structures that allowed for strong gripping and precise movements.
This whole episode started making me think about otters and how otters will use rocks to like break open clams and oysters and whatnot.
Right.
And you kind of think the same thing, right? Like you're like, oh, well, like you could take a rock and bang another rock and that doesn't really require precision. Sure, if you're just banging rocks together or like cracking open a coconut, that doesn't require as much dexterity. But if you are trying to make something and require that precision is the piece that they're getting at, is it's not about smashing rocks. It's the precision piece that I think that we need to focus on here.
You have a small, fine target that you're striking.
Right, exactly. So human hands have long thumbs that are extremely strong, like way, way stronger than anyone else with thumbs. Also, we have a staggering amount of small, fine muscles throughout our hands. So our hands are actually pretty strong, powerful tools as part of our biology.
Yeah, and all those fine muscles really enable like a very precise, coordinated movement. So we have these long, swole thumbs that are opposite our fingers, move independently, and then in a combination, we have these massive brains, and we suck at everything else.
We're terrible at everything else, yeah.
That's pretty much what we've got. To be fair, we actually have remarkably good vision for the creature like ourselves.
Okay,
like not the best vision of all the animal kingdom, but like it's pretty damn good. No, it's pretty good. And so thus we needed to mechanically upgrade our other survival features, like because we've got, like I said, all we've got is these thumbs and our brains and pretty good eyes, and that's pretty much it. So the ability to mechanically upgrade our defenses and offenses meant that we could have better shelter, better hunting, better defense, a better network of cooperation, probably the most important thing. And to do this, we needed tools and language.
Right. So recent research out of Germany has investigated the evolutionary trajectory of the shape of our hands and the onset of tool use in humans. And so it's fascinating stuff when it comes to an evolutionary standpoint.
Yeah, so as our hands became more capable of creating and manipulating tools, we also were developing language and culture at the same time. And because we had this, we could teach one another to make tools. And in doing so, we got better at making and using tools. And in doing so, we evolved our language, culture, and our brains. So likely those of us with the best adapted physical features also continued to exploit the use of those features and got closer and closer to modern humans. Because what was great about diversifying the content of skill that someone had in making something meant that you started to get different inputs, orientations, and ideas that refined those processes 1,000 times faster.
Right.
Like if it was just going to be passed on within a single family, or as like that one trait randomly mutated sometimes, it was never going to evolve at a rate that would enable a full-scale culture to develop. But what did happen instead is that like having a variety of those skills meant like language was critically important, but also being able to do the sort of fine motor dexterity was critically important as well. And so those two things worked together and built off one another to sort of form the trajectory of culture and humanity.
Right. So here's this really great quote. It is likely a crucial element underlying the development of complex culture over the last 2 million years, shaping our biocultural evolution. And that quote comes from Katharina Havarti of Eberhard Karls University of Tübingen in Germany. So that's a very long name for a school.
Yes. She was, I think, the lead investigator on this recent paper looking at the evolution of sort of human hands as they relate to culture and human evolution, as I was just saying. Now, we've already sort of said this, but as virtually every website has recommended in understanding and appreciating the role that our thumbs play, and we sort of mentioned this earlier, is try depriving yourself of your thumbs for a bit. Just as we mentioned with like the paper towel roll, tape them down or wear gloves or just try to avoid using them. And you'll pretty quickly, I think, begin to appreciate how much we've grown to depend on these weird stubby little appendages that hang off the side of our hands. They're very important. So think about that. Give it a try.
Yeah, just do yourself a favor, grab a cup that is near you and try to drink out of it without your thumb. Like, just do that for a second. I just try to do it and it is uncomfortable. Like, I'm going to definitely spill my water on me.
At the very least, you need to like fat little muscle where your thumb is to be able to grasp against it. So like, and that's part of it. So like, if you can even avoid doing that, that would be the other way to try and do it. And while you test that out, you can ignore these ads. All right. Let us know how that experiment went. You can email us or post it on social media or write a review about us for some reason where you decided to post that.
If your review does not say 5 thumbs up, I'm going to lose it.
Great. I love it.
So, Lucy and the Australopithecines, which may be the first heavy metal band, showed up and started using basic stone tools. So it was maybe not metal, but maybe hard rock.
Yeah, I think this would be like, we'd probably call this classic rock now.
Yeah, classic rock feels good. I like that. I actually like that more than anything else. So I'm not even going to bother trying to come up with something else because that works better than anything else.
And why we call it rock is because they used rocks.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy and the Australopithecines. But the interesting thing here, actually, yes, except that the strength wasn't there. The interesting thing is that there's a heavy focus on the thumb as part of the hand, but only recently did we develop tools to assess musculature and not just the fossil itself. So it's only fairly recently that we understand how the muscles in the hand work to make it so the thumb is actually useful.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as this was evolving, we wouldn't have like been able to hold a pen, but we could manipulate a lot of basic tools, sticks, rocks, something like a knife or a hammer type thing, etc. And those still required a lot of precision in those movements, but we weren't going to be at something as dexterous as like painting or developing print text yet.
Right. So maybe that's why the band didn't work out. Like why they really only maybe had one record and it's only a demo and you can never really hear it or find it anywhere. It's really rare.
Yeah, they couldn't sign swag for their fans. So
there's no autographs.
And then people were like, I hate them. Done with you.
Oh man, could you imagine how sad that would be to be the first band, like the first rock band, and just get booed off of booed out of cave?
That's probably how it went about, right?
Yeah, I would imagine so. So now we know we have thumbs and we know why we have thumbs, but what if we didn't have thumbs? And we're not talking about like Jamie Jossa from Hatebreed, how he only has one thumb. We're not talking about that. We're saying like, what if humans evolved with no thumbs? Some of this is purely hypothetical, some based in science and medicine, including birth defects, trauma, etc. But the loss of thumb rates as a 40% loss of hand. Losing any other finger on your hand is only a 20% loss.
Except your middle finger. That's like a 50% loss.
That communicates so much, at least in the States.
Yeah, important symbolism there. Yes, very much so. We actually started writing these notes quite a long time ago, and at the time, Patrick was writing with us. So big thanks and shout out to Patrick for his help in putting together some of these notes. At the time, Patrick tried this typing test, which was really fun. So he typed this sentence, and now a new study combines the ancient evidence of fossil fingers and thumbs with cutting-edge computer muscle modeling to conclude that South African hominins boasted flexible, capable thumbs, much like ours, as far back as 2 million years ago. So Patrick timed himself, and typing with thumbs that took him 8.3 minutes, and he made 3 errors. Without thumbs, that took 12.3 minutes and 5 errors. So it was a 50% longer, thereabouts. That feels like that sentence would take me about 10 seconds to type.
maybe that's what he was saying. Because let me see. I'm going to try this real quick. So
yeah. All right. Real-time experiment. Go, Shane.
Go.
10 hours later.
Done.
All right. I had you right about 30 seconds.
Okay. So 30 seconds. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 errors that I would count. Well, I would count 3 errors because I just didn't capitalize some stuff. But
so are we recreating the without thumbs part 2?
No, I don't want to do that. That's a lot of dead space.
Great. I was like, that seems like a lot of work.
Well, so you think about it though, like the standard typing on a QWERTY keyboard requires you to use your thumb as a space, like to press the space bar.
Right.
And so, every word in there's several spaces that would absolutely delay how long it took you to write that.
Yeah. Maybe it was supposed to be 8.3 seconds, but anyway, there's experiment.
No way that Patrick wrote that in 8.3 seconds. I know Patrick. There's no way.
So you think that 8.3 minutes is more realistic?
I don't know what it is. I think that I think all of those measures are wrong.
That seems like an absurdly long time. I mean, 8.3 seconds is like stupidly fast, but like 8.3 minutes is
is ridiculously
long. You could write
long.
So many pages of text with that.
Yeah, maybe Patrick doesn't know how to type. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe Patrick doesn't know how to type. Maybe he didn't have a web design class like we did in high school.
Maybe it was trying to do it from memory, so there's also a recall component. Anyway, let's get back on track here. Thumbs absent at birth. That is a thing that does happen. So interestingly, thumb opposition actually develops around 6 to 8 months of age. And if one hand develops this, the other may develop movement or grasp that can be difficult to rehabilitate later in life, meaning that if like one hand does and the other one doesn't. So just an interesting thing about the development of this early on.
Yeah, and there's also floating thumb, which is interesting. Floating thumb is the base of your thumb is weakly attached or unstable, limiting musculature control and stability when opposing another finger. So if you think about like kind of the way that your hand is structured, like every one of your fingers is like it's called a hinge joint, right? A little bit where it's like it bends at that space. It doesn't really bend in a circle or anything. Like not your knuckles in your hand, but like where your finger knuckles.
Yeah.
And your thumb is a saddle joint, which basically means that like the base of your thumb kind of slides over the bone in your hand, similar to like a saddle is shaped.
Okay.
That's how the bone in your hand is shaped, and it slides over like that, like you would put your legs over. A floating thumb would be absent some of that joint or the muscles and tendons around that. So it would not like keep your thumb close to that bone and would not allow it to slide across that bone that way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That probably helps too.
Yeah.
It's a part of the opposable nature of it, I guess.
Yeah.
We have some sort of interesting tidbits here. One is that some believe that our ability to hold things in our hands freed up our mouths to do like things like verbal communication and talking. So because if you'll notice, most other creatures, when they're carrying things, will carry them in their mouths, but we can carry them with our hands instead. So that meant that we could annoy each other with podcasts.
Yeah, you can thank thumbs for us being here doing this right now. Like if it wasn't for thumbs, thanks thumbs for why we do what we do. Yeah, why we do what we do, brought to you by thumbs. That's our newest sponsor. So if you lose a thumb, the big and second toes can sub in. Like you can actually kind of do similar things with your big toe and your second toe on your foot that you can do with your thumb. Now, you have to have the flexibility to bring whatever you're doing up to your face if you're like using it to drink or something like that. But like there is that other kind of barrier per se, but like you can do, it has similar features.
Yeah, you need, and the motivation, you'll need that too. This reminds me of, there was a skit on The Office where Dwight decides he wants to learn how to use his toes as opposable thumbs.
Yes.
One of the cold opens and then spills coffee all over himself and then high fives with his foot. It's very good.
Yeah, it's so great.
If you are experiencing thumb pain, it might be the case that depending on the nature of that pain, an electric toothbrush might actually help the gripping of the toothbrush. People might be hurting their thumbs that way. And so an electric toothbrush might make that a little easier depending on the nature you're dealing with. If it's because your thumb has been crushed by something, unlikely to be helpful. But if it's because of how you're gripping your toothbrush, then maybe consider an electric one.
Yeah. The part that everybody comes here for is all the correlational research. So
yeah, right.
This is going to be so fun. So finger length might predict behavior, but it probably doesn't, which is a lot of fun. So it could or it could not. Finger length is a weird thing, but also shorter index fingers can mean that the person will engage in increased verbal aggression. Shorter index fingers might also mean that the person has improved athletic skills.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those, like, I think the way to orient to this is none of this is true. Other variables more correctly account for why this would be the case. And we're going to say it anyway because it's funny. Shorter index fingers in men more likely to pick fights, and women more likely to react aggressively when provoked.
Huh. If you have a shorter index finger than your ring finger, then you have healthier knees.
And a longer ring finger in men means you take more risks.
So
that's some nonsense. All of that is so much nonsense.
It's so much nonsense. But I can guarantee that everybody's looking at your hands now. So isn't that the true gift of psychology? Is not necessarily and us.
That's our gift to you.
So much. Yeah, it's not so much the finger length. It's that we on a podcast distant in the future that you have listened to this for maybe the first time. We've got you to look at your hands. That's the real joy of psychology.
And just appreciate them. Just find the love, you know?
So according to that means I'm supposed to have healthier knees and I'm taking more risks. That could not be more opposite. I don't like to take risks and my knees suck.
Yeah, I definitely have, looking at this, quite healthy knees, but I am verbally aggressive, which I think would, that lines up. That tracks.
Yeah.
Just kidding. All right. And the last thing here, Nintendo thumb. And not to pick on Nintendo, it's more like video game thumb, but repetitive strain injury caused by repeated thumb movements. Some people sort of think of this as Nintendo thumb, the sort of hours and hours and hours of just, manipulating buttons and knobs on a controller of some sort.
Yeah.
So just a thing that people talk about.
Yeah, I mean, repetitive strain injury, like I was taught about that at Starbucks. Like that's something that they train their baristas on because you do the same thing over and over when you're making coffee.
Makes sense.
That they're like, hey, don't do that because you'll hurt yourself if you do it too much. So it's just a thing that happens when you do the same thing over and over and over again too much.
Yeah, which is, likely true of virtually anything.
Yeah, including ads.
Hey, I think maybe mission accomplished. That was kind of a shorter one because that is basically what we have to say about thumbs. Think about the fact that this weird part of our body has enabled a huge amount, if not all, of our culture to develop. Granted, we needed language and the meaty goo between our ears to help, but all of that was a part of the stew that became humans and what humans do. So I think that's what I have to say about thumbs. Anything you'd like to add or anything that I forgot before we start transitioning to our credits and recommendations?
I think my favorite thumb-related thing that I can think of is probably the Gladiator. Like, I think that's like the most like prominent thumb-related media that I can think of is like when they give the thumbs up and thumbs down, and it's like that's how the emperor decided. Like, I thought that was so like that stuck with me for so many years, and that's like really the only thumb-related media that I can think of. I don't know why that came to me just now. The movie, the Gladiator, the movie with Joaquin Phoenix and Russell Crowe. Yeah, I mean, I know there's other thumbs up, thumbs down things that happen.
Yeah,
but like that was one thing I think of a lot when it comes to thumbs.
There's like the thumbs up emoji that's like the icon for Facebook or Meta or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's weird.
And, I think MySpace kind of started with a very similar thing of, liking people's photos and whatnot or something of that nature. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting now. Social media history
I can't keep up with it.
Yeah. I just stopped caring so many years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like it.
Well, if you're joining us for the first time, one of the things that we do is we like to share some recommendations that are usually, if not always, I mean, not always, but usually unrelated to the topic at hand. So we're going to share those things that we find fun in it and enjoyable, and that you might find fun and enjoyable too. But in the meantime, I need to tell you some things that are important, which is that if you'd like to support the show, as I said, you can leave us a rating or review. It's very helpful, helps the algorithm find more people. You can like and subscribe. That way you never miss an episode, which you definitely don't want to do. You can pick up some merch from our merch store, and you can go join us on Patreon. And if you do that, then you will have many benefits. One of those is that I'm going to read your name, because I just appreciate the fact that you have made the leap to come help us financially. And that is Mike M, Megan, Mike T, Justin, Kim, Joshua, Brad, Stephanie, Olivia, Brian, Ashley, Kiara, and Michelle. Thank you all very much for your generous contributions and keeping us going.
Yes. We love you so much.
Thank you so much to my team, writing and fact checking from Shane and myself, with some extra help, and a special shout out to Patrick for his work on this episode. Our sound editing and engineering and making goodness comes from Justin, and our social media coordinator is Emma Wilson. Now, let's get to some recommendations.
Recommendations.
My recommendation is a weird one. I'm going to preface this by saying I don't like the way it's written, but I think the premise is fun.
Okay.
And that is a book called The Cipher by Kath Koja. Okay. It's a pretty gratuitous horror book. It kicks off right away that it's a horror book. The idea is that a hole has opened up in a storage room in this couple's apartment building. It's a black hole that seems to go nowhere, and they don't know what it is, and they kind of experiment to figure out what's going on, what's happening with what it might be about. It's like very like body horror.
Okay.
So like there's just like weird gross out things that happen in it. I think the thing I don't like about it, it's kind of written a little bit like stream of consciousness, but the premise is cool because it's kind of like it never explains where the hole came from, what it is, why it does what it does, what it does, but it is pretty freaky. And I think it's a fun read. It's not a long read. It doesn't take very long at all, but it is like an interesting read around like the idea that like what happens with obsession. Like you find this thing and you are obsessed with it, and how obsession can destroy you or strengthen you or do any of these things. So there's like a really cool theme to it. But yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. And it was something I had just seen as like a recommendation on Book Talk.
Yeah.
You know, and they were like, hey, try this. And I was like, I'll check this out. And it was pretty good. It was a decent read.
Okay. How old is this book, out of curiosity?
It's very, very new. 2022.
Oh, okay. So there was a horror movie that came out a few years ago that had a sort of similar premise, and I want to say it was called Holes. Okay. And it was like just opened up in this person's apartment or something, and it was terrible, and I don't recommend it. But I was like, I wonder if the film was inspired by the book, but it sounds like that was not the case.
I mean, I don't know. It very well could have been. Maybe it was like a premise that was shared or something like that, or maybe it was just parallel thinking. But
yeah,
I don't know. Either way, this one was pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty good.
Cool. All right. So this is The Cipher.
Yes, The Cipher.
Okay, and that's Kath Koja was the author?
Uh-huh. Yeah, Kath
cool.
or Kathy Koja.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I'm recommending a movie called No Hard Feelings. This is like a coming-of-age comedy sort of movie. Interesting cast in here. So we've got, I think, largely the lead in here that most people will recognize is Jennifer Lawrence. Opposite her is an actor who I don't think I've seen before named Andrew Barth Feldman. And then some other notable ones, Natalie Morales, Matthew Broderick, Scott MacArthur, Kyle Mooney is in it, Hassan Minhaj, the comedian. So there's a pretty decent smattering of recognizable names in here. It's just... I guess I can give away the premise because it's pretty much stated right up front. The idea is these people want to hire someone to date their son to get him out of his shell because he's very introverted and closed off. And hilarity ensues, we'll put it that way. It doesn't have a great rating on IMDb, but I actually thought it was extremely funny. I will warn people, this is on the raunchier side of comedies. If that's a thing that you don't like, then you probably won't enjoy this. But I thought it was very funny and enjoyed it a lot. So, and it's just a quick, little easy comedy to go consume. So if you're interested, go check out No Hard Feelings. I think at the time that we're recording this, it's on Netflix, but it's out there. It's around. You can get it.
Yeah, I've heard it's pretty funny. I've heard it's pretty entertaining.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to say about romantic comedies and horror books. If you would like to tell us about those things, or not really, I mean, it's kind of a rom-com, it's mostly just a comedy, but if you would like to tell us about those things, or about thumbs, or evolution, or apes, or anything like that, then we would look forward to hearing from you. If you're going to write us about evolution, then it will land on deaf ears. Or, I mean, creation. Evolution we want to hear. Creationism, it will land on deaf ears. You can write us all you want, but I'm going to ignore you. Anyway, you can reach us directly at info@wwd.podcast.com. Of course, you can reach us on the social media platforms and interact with us there. If you, again, I'm looking for creative, or not creative, but like constructive criticism and comments, and of course, heaping amounts of praise are always welcome. So those things, you can do those things there.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, all the other support things. Is there anything that I'm missing, or anything you'd like to add before we wrap this up, Shane?
I got nothing on my end.
Okay, and we can wrap this up because we can use wrapping paper because we have thumbs, so we're going to do that thing. But anyway, that's all I have to say. This is Abraham.
This is Shane.
We're out.
See ya.
You've been listening to Why We Do What We Do. You can learn more about this and other episodes by going to www.wwdpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope you have an awesome day.